Greetings, my name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin,
and we are the Dungeon Dudes. And we're kicking off our discussion on all the class changes in the 2024 Player's Handbook with a close look at the fighter.
We've gotten our hands on the 2024 Player's Handbook and have read through it pretty thoroughly. We're going to be doing more than just looking at the base class. We're also going to be looking at the various feats and spells and other options that might impact this class. There's a lot to discuss, so let's get rolling.
So kicking things off, let's focus on what is still the same. The fighter is still an action-surging, martial weapon-wielding, feat-loving warrior who makes a ton of attacks and is a total butt-kicker.
But as we look at the big picture, the fighter has become considerably more tactical and versatile in combat thanks to weapon masteries, with tons more options and choices each round.
They also gained a huge boost in exploration and social play, thanks in large part to changes to Second Wind, but there's also going to be some knock-on effects from that from the changes to feats and their subclasses depending on what you pick. And I want to start off this conversation with the changes to Second Wind specifically, because I really think that these put a lot of speed in the sails of the fighter overall.
Second Wind has gotten a brand new coat of paint and it looks really nice here on the fighter. You now start with 2 uses of it, and you actually gain more as you level up, capping out at 4 uses total at level 10. And you regain 1 use every time you take a short rest, and if you take a long rest, you regain all of them.
Now, what's really cool is that fighters can use their Second Wind to heal themselves as a bonus action, just as they always have been able to. But starting at level 2, you can use Tactical Mind to activate Second Wind when you fail an ability check. And that lets you then add a D10 to the roll, potentially turning the failure into a success. Best of all, if you still fail, you don't expend your Second Wind.
At 5th level, you get Tactical Shift, which lets you move half your speed without provoking opportunity attacks when you use Second Wind. I think combined, being able to use this on skill checks and being able to increase your movement and maneuverability, I think that those are 2 brand new ways that are really going to impact the fighter.
Yes, and I think one of the things that we'll see, especially with Tactical Mind, is that the fighter's subclasses, particularly the Eldritch Knight, as well as the Battlemaster, are going to give, and even the way that fighters interact with feats in general, are going to give them more options for boosting their ability to make skill checks. And I actually think that there's a potential here for the fighters to kind of brute force their way through ability checks with Second Wind and their other features that I quite like and feels very appropriate for fighters.
As we move on to the other new feature that is going to be for all the martial classes in the game, Weapon Masteries. The fighter, of course, being the ultimate combatant, is going to benefit a lot from Weapon Masteries. Fighters gain 3 Weapon Masteries to start, and ultimately get 6 total as they gain levels.
Fighters love almost all the masteries and can use them both with ranged and melee weapons, whether they're going to be doing two-handed weapons, sword and board, whether they're going to be dual wielding, whether they're going to be archers or crossbow wielders. And I think that the combination of the changes to the feats combined with the weapon masteries is going to open up a lot of different tactical play options. And in many respects, the weapon masteries like push, topple, slow, all of these really let all the fighters get a taste of what it was like to be a Battlemaster.
Yeah, it's going to be a small sampling of actually getting that sort of versatility that the Battlemasters have. And at level 9, we do get Tactical Master, which lets us change any weapon's mastery to push, sap, or slow on a per attack basis. Which means that, like the Battlemaster, depending on the situation that we're in, each attack can apply one of 3 effects or more if we have weapons that don't normally do push, sap, or slow.
I think this is really significant for the ranged fighters, because if you look at the ranged weapons, there's not many of them that get push and sap.
Yeah.
The heavy crossbow gets push, but in order to use it effectively with all the fighters' attacks, you'll have to take Crossbow Expert. So this could be a really interesting option for a longbow wielding fighter, depending on how you want to go, because pushing people on ranged attacks, Warlocks can tell you how much fun that is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But sap also imposing disadvantage is going to be, I think, a really big deal for the sword and board playstyle. But again, a ranged character imposing sap
The other thing I really like here is if you dual wield with two different weapons,
Yeah.
you can start applying so many different options onto your weapon masteries and all of that. So,
Although I do think the dominant dual wielding style is going to be a Vex weapon with a Nick weapon, because Vex is going to give you advantage on your next attack when you strike with it, and Nick lets you just have the extra attack from dual wielding as part of your action, thus preserving your bonus action for other things. We'll talk about this a little bit later. The interaction with the way the new dual wielder feat works prompts some questions, but there could be lots of other things to still do with your bonus action too here. Speaking of actions, Action Surge is still here. It's still amazing. You just can't use it on the magic action. So sorry, Eldritch Knights, no Action Surge to double Fireball. Sorry, people who like to multi-class into Fighter so they can Action Surge to cast spells. No.
that feels fine. That feels appropriate.
But worth noting that when you Action Surge in your dual wielding, you get to double dip on your dual wielding.
Which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Indomitable has had a little bit of an overhaul here as well. You now add your fighter level to the reroll, making this a lot more potent than it used to be.
It's by mid levels, I think in most cases, it's just going to be like legendary resistance.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that fighters really needed, because I have seen so many times Joe with Paluto just get taken out, and the Indomitable reroll doesn't matter because his intelligence saving throw bonus was like +0 and he needed an 18 to succeed anyways.
Yeah.
Right? So Indomitable now is really going to help the fighters make the saves that they're bad at when it really matters.
So let's talk about feats.
Yeah.
Fighters have always been the class that really loves feats. They get the most feats, and they get to choose a lot more than everybody else.
Yeah.
And now we have origin feats. So every class in the game, everybody who plays gets a feat at first level, which is just going to put our fighter into a really great place pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I think the origin feats are a really good place to diversify your character. I think Magic Initiate and Skilled are two really cool places to add a lot more diversity and versatility to your fighter. And in some cases with Magic Initiate, the options you can choose from are just raw power. I love that Magic Initiate lets you choose Wizard, Cleric, or the Druid spell list, and it also lets you decide, do you want to cast with Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma? So you can actually sneak your way into having Wizard cantrips with Wisdom on a fighter, depending on how you're building.
Yeah.
And Skilled is just going to give you a lot more skills, which help
utility outside of combat. I think also Tavern Brawler, if you want to be a boxer.
Yes, I actually think that the boxer fighter with Tavern Brawler and the grappler feat and athlete and all that good stuff is actually entirely viable. One of the big things to note with the fighters, I think that they really, this is a big picture thing. All the general feats as well are now giving a +1 bonus to an ability score. So if we look at some of our classic fighter builds, say the Sentinel, Great Weapon Master, Polearm Master, which is still good. Previously, if you were a fighter that beelined all those feats, you could get them all by level 6 if you were a variant human, or everyone else you could get them all by level 8, but you'd still be stuck with whatever you started off with your strength as, usually 16. You wouldn't be able to max out your strength to 20 until, again, if you were the variant human level 12, or if you were not playing a human level 16. But now, all those feats, Great Weapon Master, Polearm Master, and Sentinel, all let you take +1 strength. So an 8th level fighter is going to have their origin feat, all those feats, and a 20 strength. This really, in my mind, is a big change, because a lot of people are going to be sad with the nerfs to Great Weapon Master and Sharpshooter.
Sharpshooter's been nerfed in the sense that they have removed the damage bonus. It still does the other things, which are cool, but you're losing that really juicy damage bonus. With Great Weapon Master, there's no penalty anymore to your 2-hit, and the damage is equal to your proficiency modifier. But you can now only use it when you take the attack action on your turn. So a little bit of a nerf, still a decent feat, but it's just been brought down a peg.
Well, but looking at that in context, right? The fighter that has 20 strength and without the -5 penalty anymore is now adding at level 8, they've got their +3 proficiency bonus, and their raw damage modifier is now 2 points higher, and their attack bonus is 2 points higher as well. So before, you were taking a -5 penalty to attacks, and you were adding +10 to your damage. Now there's no attack penalty, but your damage that you're adding to it, 2014 to 2024 compared, it's a 5-point add, so it's only 5 points added. I feel like that the accuracy combined with just the flat out extra damage, I feel like that pulls you ahead.
It's one of those things that if you look at Great Weapon Master on its own, you go womp womp. But if you actually look at who's using Great Weapon Master and the other benefits that they're getting, I think the fighter is coming out a winner here.
You're coming out swinging, especially. Polar Master is fundamentally unchanged. And so I think that like it just now adds a +1 strength. And still works with spears and all that good stuff. Sentinel is still amazing. So that combo is alive and well. The Sharpshooter crossbow expert, on the other hand, I think it's still good, but it just isn't as...
It's a reasonable option, but it's not a game-breaking option.
Yeah, the cool thing, at least, is that we used to harp on this all the time, was that even with crossbow expert, you couldn't actually dual wield hand crossbows in 2014. Now you actually can dual wield hand crossbows in 2024 because Crossbow Expert lets you reload your hand crossbows one-handed. Yeah. Explicitly calls that out. And Crossbow Expert is still going to have you firing that as a bonus action, but the dual wielding of hand crossbows doesn't benefit from the interactions of Nyx and Vex. So I think it's still good.
Yeah.
It's just not crazy good like it used to be.
Another subtle change that's happened that I actually really like, still in line with Feats, is that the fighting styles are all now Feats. At first, I was like, okay, that doesn't really change anything. They've just put them in a different section. But that also means that people like fighters who gain a fighting style naturally from their class can also choose additional fighting styles in their feat choices. So if there is a few fighting styles that you really wanted to grab and you think you could benefit from having more than one, and there are a lot of reasons why you might, you can do that now. And I think that that's great, especially with a fighter who at later levels might be like, I don't know what to do with this feat choice. I have so many. So maybe you pick up another fighting style.
Yeah. And ultimately across the board, I just think that this is a lot more customization here. And even again, with the changes, we're coming out way ahead. Then let's add the subclasses on top of it, because this is where things are really going to start to get super juicy. So the Battle Master, I think this is the poster child, the classic favorite. What do we got going on here?
I mean, a bunch of the stuff from Tasha's is now imported into the Battle Master, the Tasha's maneuvers that were added in, which is great. Those were excellent maneuvers. One thing that we're going to see pretty consistently, and I think that it's important to mention that Tasha's did add a lot to several of the different classes. The base 2014 book did not have those in it, and not everybody bought Tasha's. So for people who are maybe new to the game or people who only bought the core books and have been playing with those, it is actually beneficial to see a lot of the good options from Tasha's make their way into the core of some of these classes. Yeah. And so I think that the fighter, it's great to see these maneuvers here. They're welcome.
I really like that you now have maneuvers that you can use to add to social skill checks and things like that. And I just think that you're going to be able to power, like this is the example of combining the second wind, because it's like you want to use commanding presence, you want to make that persuasion roll, grab your superiority die, grab that D10, top those onto the roll. And if you want to, you could grab the skill expert feat to get expertise in persuasion, and your fighter is now suddenly a really competent party face.
Yeah, and that feels nice that you can actually steer them in that direction. At level 15, Relentless now lets the Battlemaster fighter use a D8 instead of expending a superiority die.
Yeah, so again, you can basically expend all those skill check boosting ones all the time with this. And then you've got all the superior die you want. And I think it's worth mentioning just the raw capability to get 2 effects on an attack by combining a maneuver with a weapon mastery.
Yeah. I think that the Battle Master is still looking beautiful here. I think one of the other big winners is going to be the Eldritch Knight. The Eldritch Knight, first and foremost, they've gotten rid of the magic school limitations. Eldritch Knights can now just pick spells. They can just pick spells.
I love this. There's going to be so many combos here.
The shenanigans.
The shenaniganery is going to be great. This is also boosted by the fact that Eldritch Knights now get the Blade Singer style extra attack, where they can replace one of their attacks with a cantrip. Now, it's worth noting the Green Flame Blade, Booming Blade cantrips did not make it in to the player's handbook.
That doesn't mean you can't use them.
No, and if you're using the backwards compatibility, it's going to be amazing. True Strike, though, now
is way better.
Because it lets you use your spellcasting ability for the attack. It turns it into radiant damage, and it adds, as you level up, an extra d6 or as the cantrip scales. So it might be worth doing that because, again, one of the cool things with the Eldritch Knight, too, with the feats, is that an Eldritch Knight now might have enough feats to max out their strength and then also boost their int.
Yeah. I think so. Not only are we getting that sweet option of being able to power up our fighter, but then also with the Eldritch Knight, I want to talk about Blade Ward and I want to talk about Shield. So, okay, we're talking about True Strike already, but now Blade Ward means that your enemies are going to be subtracting a d4 from their rolls to hit. Let's just, for the sake of arguments, pretend that that just means that you're adding d4 to your AC, because essentially
it's a cantrip that you concentrate on.
Yeah.
Now, this is what it's been changed to from what it was earlier.
But you can also cast Shield, which gives you a +5 to your AC. So if you have a generous DM who lets you buy plate armor early on, you're level 3. Okay, you're level 3. You're
Maybe
level
4.
3 or
Maybe
4 fighter.
Yeah.
You have plate armor. Maybe you have a shield and a longsword. You cast Blade Ward. You cast Shield. And then you're striking with True Strike.
Yep, and and if you take the protection fighting style for +1 AC, your base AC is 21. Blade Ward is adding plus D4, and Shield adds another +5. And so, assuming you got plate relatively early in the campaign, you're looking at an AC of 26.
27? Because +5.
Well, 26 plus 1d4. So between 27 and 31.
Yeah.
And even without the plate armor, like even if you have chainmail to start, and you didn't get the upgraded plate, it's still an AC between 25 and 29.
Yeah.
At like third or fourth level.
Now that's one build option, but just to show you, it's beautiful.
But adding on top of that, you're using a longsword with a sap weapon mastery, which is imposing disadvantage on attack rolls too.
Boom. So now they have disadvantage, minus D4.
Yeah.
You have plus, yeah.
Yeah, and then add on top of that, grab yourself the Sentinel feat, because you're going to be able to get that. Grab yourself the Shield Master feat. Grab yourself Warcaster.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's going to be a really tasty Eldritch Knight build.
Psy Warrior feels similar. Champion feels similar, but champions do get heroic inspiration every turn as starting at level 10. So heroic inspiration means that they get to re-roll a d20 roll.
It's gonna be pretty good.
At level 10, a champion actually just gets to be like, I didn't like that roll, I'm going to re-roll it, which is great. That's awesome. Good job, champions. You're still championing being a fighter. So those are the subclasses. I think those are overall the big changes. My final thoughts on the fighter changes is I think the fighter's coming out a winner here. I think it's the most exciting it's ever been. Not only are they going to be performing better in combat, but with more versatility and also more options outside of combat. They can now gain things like we said, like taking persuasion and actually powerhousing their way into a role where maybe they're not the party face if they're in the party with a bard. But I've seen at our table so many times, even if my character's the party face, somebody else ends up in a situation where they got to make that persuasion roll. And if the fighter's stuck there, they got the tools to help.
I just really like it's like such a subtle change to Second Wind, but when you look at it in the network of all the other feat changes, I think that fighters, and then when you look at all their combat capabilities, I think that fighters are going to be able to rule the battlefield unquestionably. It's a huge upgrade for them, and then outside of combat, they actually have some things to do. And Eldritch Knights are going to be able to enjoy having more non-combat spells. They're also going to like the more broad changes to ritual casting in general too, for bringing their familiars and things like that. I love it. I think that the new fighter is really, really strong. I think that a lot of the other kind of final thought that's worth noting is that a 1-level fighter dip to grab weapon masteries and to grab just the features that you get from a 1-level fighter dip is really tempting for everybody.
Yeah. Fighter still feels like the multi-class best friend. They're the bacon of multi-class.
Well, the action surge might not make it as tempting for spellcasters. I think that a lot of characters, the fighter multi-class is still really good. And we're going to see a lot of builds that are just going to like the fact that you can dip in here, get action surge, get the second wind stuff going, maybe go as far as getting a fighter subclass, but it really adds a lot. And I think for because if you think about it, for 1 fighter level, you're getting the fighting style feat, you're getting the weapon masteries unlocked, you're getting the weapon proficiencies unlocked, you're getting second wind. It's a lot from 1 level. And so a fighter dip, I think that many other marshals or characters that don't get weapon masteries but would like to play with weapon masteries are going to be tempted to take that 1-level fighter just to get it.
So tell us your thoughts on the new fighter or what you think of the changes, and if you're excited to play one in the comments below.
The videos that we make at our channel are made possible thanks to the incredible generosity of our Patreon supporters. If you'd like to join our Patreon community and get on our patron-only Discord server, follow the links down below.
And if you want to see us playing some D&D, you can check out our Adventures in the Worlds of Drakenheim, which airs Tuesday evenings right here on YouTube. You can check all the previous episodes right up over here.
And we got plenty more coverage on all the class changes for the 2024 Player's Handbook. Find that playlist right there.
Please subscribe to our channel, like this video, and ring that bell so that you never miss an episode.
Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time
in the dungeon.